and it started. So, welcome everyone. I'm very happy that you are here. I will stop sharing the introduction screen. I'm very happy that you are here. My name is Márton Pál, and I am the secretary of the Hungarian ProGEO group and an assistant lecturer at the Eötvös Torony University, the Institute of Cartography and Geoinformatics in Budapest, Hungary. I feel honored to host this event on behalf of the ProGEO and on behalf of my university too. And I'm very happy that you are just coming, and many people will come afterwards. Just some technical information about the meeting. I would like to ask everyone to mute their microphones, mute your microphones during the presentations, and if possible, turn off your cameras, because I would like, or we would like, to see the presenters during the presentations. And yes, we have two presentations now from Lucie Kubalíková and Jack Matthews. And each of the presentations have 30 minutes. After the first presentation, just after the presentation will come the next presentation, and we will have some discussion time after both of the presentations are finished. So there will be the time for you to ask, and do not hesitate to ask. Both topics are very interesting, and I would like to encourage you to get in touch with the presenters. Before I give the floor to Lucie, I would like to thank both Lucie and Jack that they accepted the invitation. The background story of this seminar reaches back to the ProGEO symposium in Loughborough 1 month ago in October. I invited both of the presenters there, and they were very happy to take part in this seminar. And I would like to express my thanks in this way to them too. The first presenter will be Lucie. If possible, Lucie, we would like to see you.
Yes. Hi. Okay.
The first presenter is Lucie.
Hello,
and she's from the Institute of Geonics from the Czech Academy of Sciences. And she will present about the geoheritage of Brno and the use of Brno's geoheritage in the Czech Republic. And I would like to give the floor to you, Lucie, and we are waiting for your presentation. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Márton, and good afternoon to everyone. I will try to share my screen. I hope it will work. So, do you see the presentation?
Yes, we see the PowerPoint, but not the presentation mode.
Okay, I will try to... now, I don't think it's visible.
It's not, it's again no.
It's still the presentation, I suppose.
Yes, you have two displays, don't you?
Mm-hmm. So I will try again. Sorry. Now you can see the PowerPoint or presentation?
The PowerPoint, but not the presentation mode.
Okay, so it's quite a long time since COVID is gone, so I forgot to everything. Now you can see
Now it's perfect.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I would like to present my topic about geoconservation and geotourism in urban areas. conflicts of interest or chance to balancing the needs of nature and society. As you can imagine, urban areas are the places where geodiversity, culture, and urban development meet. And geodiversity and geoheritage in the cities is influenced by urban development. It is accessible to a larger number of people. It's closely linked to the culture, architecture, and history. It also brings the evidences of the landscape and land use changes. It helps to explain the setting of important buildings or communication. And of course, it is a good resource for geotourism. Here are some examples. The tunnel in Prague, where the tramway tunnel had to be built through the Vyšehrad rock. You can see the rock above the tunnel. Then on the middle, it's a Potosi town in Bolivia, where the presence of natural resources like silver and other ores helped or contributed significantly to development of the city. Then on the right side, the painting of Czech or Silesian town Tridek, where the castle is located on the elevation to have an overview of all the city, and a picture of some architectural heritage from Rome.
Cambiado. Inicialmente era el 29 y 30, pero la...
Sorry, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay. We can divide geoheritage in urban area in two large groups, in situ and ex situ. In situ geoheritage is represented by geosites and geomorphosite census stricto, and usually they are legally protected. In Czechia, we have some nature monuments and reserves, important landscape elements, and so. On the right side, you have an example of toad rock in Rust Hole in Tunbridge Wells in southern England, which is protected as a scientific site of special interest in UK. And of course, there are also some sites that are not protected, but they are somehow monitored or are supposed to be protected in future. Then we have viewpoint geosites. These are localities which offer a wider look on the surrounding landscapes and better understanding of its history, spatial relationships. And so we can see the example on the right side from Slavonice, Czech city. And usually this site and cities are very common. These are towers of some churches or some bridges or some building terraces of some high buildings. So in cities or in urban settings, these viewpoints or geosite viewpoints are very frequent. Another type of geoheritage in urban areas are geocultural sites. Usually they can be anthropogenic landforms, for example, quarries, sand pits, or anthropogenic underground, including cellars or artificial caves carved in rock. Of course, we can include some landforms that are important from the point of view how the city or town developed during the time. On the right side, we have an example from Karviná, which is a black coal region on a northern Czech Republic. And we can see the church, which is somehow inclined. And originally, the church was situated on the top, on the elevation, but during the time and during mining activity, there were some declinations and total changes of the landforms. So these landforms, although they have disappeared somehow, are also very important regarding some geocultural value. Another example, as I said, are some types of anthropogenic landforms. On the very right side, on the top, we have an example from Brno. It's ossuary carved in soft rocks, loess and loams. and it's one of the biggest ossuary in the Middle Europe. And the last example, it's similar to the previous. It's from northern Bohemia, city of Most, where you can see the landscape changes. The landscape was influenced here by brown coal mining. These the geoculture sites are very closely related to technical mining and cultural heritage. Then we have geoheritage ex situ, and this is represented especially by use of natural resources and local material for monuments, churches, walls, pavement, and so on. Sometimes the use of local material is linked to the nickname of the cities. As you can see, the picture down on the slide, it's from Jaisalmer, and thanks to the bright yellow color of the golden limestone that was used here, the city is nicknamed like Golden City. Another example of the use of local material is up, and it's in Lisbon, and using Pedra Lios. And this stone is recognized as global heritage stone, and it's very typical for the Lisbon architecture. And of course, there are some other cultural assets related to geodiversity, creating intangible geocultural heritage. For example, reflection of geodiversity in arts and literature, in toponyms, or in heraldry. Here are some examples of toponyms. Usually, we can see the reflection of lithology, morphology, hydrology, and mining or quarrying processes. So, some examples from Brno. Červený kopec, or Red Hill, you can see the name of the street. It's named after the bright red color of the sandstone, which occurs here. Then we can see the example about hydrology. For example, Vodní Street, Water Street, or Embankment Street. Both sides are without water anymore. There is nothing like this, but it reflects the past use of the water and place where some ponds or mill races were situated. These toponyms have usually high educational and interpretational potential and strong links to the geohistorical aspect and urban development. Some examples from heraldry or coats of arms of specific cities. In heraldry, we can see the reflection of natural resources like ores or gold. Here is the letter B. You can see the miner which dig on the rock full of gold veins. Then very often there are some mining tools or miners. As you can see, the letter C, it's Jachimov, and D, it's Havířov. And also there are some other geodiversity features like landforms, some rock outcrops or mountains, hydrological elements, rivers, swamps, springs, or paleontological elements, which is not very often, but in Czechia we have some examples from Barandian area. It's letter A, Skrie, and down right, Jince rock, there is a fossil of trilobite. And quite interesting is, as I said, water elements. On the middle, on the bottom, there is a bit strange sign or coat of arms of the town Konetopi, which mean swamp or water in which the horse drove. You can see the drawn horse there. Now I would like to say something about geoconservation and geotourism in Brno. Brno is situated on the border of Bohemia Massif and Western Carpathians, so this results in higher lithological and morphological diversity. You can see the geological map is really very colorful, and here is a more detailed map. We created a database of geosites, geocultural sites, and viewpoints in our city, and we defined some geosites, geoculture sites viewpoints in one group. And then we have some specific categories like geocultural objects, which are related to local lithology and use of natural resources on historical monument. And also we included some temporary exposures, which gave us a possibility of some rescue earth sciences research. For the geoconservation and geotourism purposes, only natural and geocultural sites were assessed, and the entire database served as a resource for the activities related to public outreach. We identified 89 natural and geocultural sites, then 63 geocultural objects, and 12 viewpoint geosites. Here are some examples. The first is geocultural site of where nearly all the rocks mined or quarried in the Brno and its surroundings are displayed. Then some rock outcrops of oldest metabasaltic rocks. Then, of course, some hydrological geosites. Then there is one viewpoint, one example of a viewpoint where you can observe the morphology of the city and its surroundings. Then on the right side on the top, there is one temporary exposure, which unfortunately doesn't exist. And then are some other landforms interesting from the earth science of from the point of view of earth sciences. We did a complete assessment and statistical procedures, which resulted into the typology of geomorphosites or geosites regarding their suitability for sustainable tourism development with respect to the geoconservation principles. We identified 4 groups, and for every group we did brief recommendations. The first group were the sites with high values, including the conservation values. So these sites could form the backbone or top sites in regards of geotourist offer. The development of geotourism, however, is possible when respecting the conservation aspects. But fortunately, the sites are usually have a high degree of protection, and those who are not protected are suggested for legal protection on a municipal level. Then there are some sites with high educational and tourist value and average other values. These sites can complement or alternative the top sites. We have some examples of some abandoned quarries or street cuttings. Then number 3, or group number 3, are the sites with average values and higher conservation value. These sites are not so important from the geodiversity point of view, but they have important, for example, culture or biodiversity aspect. So they can be used generally for environmental education, and by connecting geoheritage or geodiversity and biodiversity and culture, we can bring this topic to more people. And then there are some sites with average values which could be used for environmental protection, but these are usually aside the main offer, let's say. I said that I could, another topic I would like to speak about are the threats to geodiversity and geoheritage in cities. Of course, some conflicts of interest may occur despite the existing and established legal protection and other geoconservation measures. Crofts et al. Defined 11 different groups of threats in protected areas, but they can be applied also in urban areas. For example, construction, mining, changes in land use, or recreation and geotourism, and so on. We have also some other type of threats like vandalism, vegetation overgrowth, lack of state or regional finances for management, or confusion in protection measures. On the right side, you can see the examples. The construction activity on the top, which destroyed a profile in old quarry where some tunnelite were displayed together with some river terraces on the top. Then mining on the Chernovice sandpit, which leads to total changes in the landscape. Then vandalism. These are rocks that are over 700 million years old, but they are somehow decorated by vandals. And also vegetation overgrown. On the bottom, you can see some example of old sandpit, which was paleontologically important, but today nothing can be seen there. Also, I mentioned the confusion in protection measure. It is the situation on the map. As you can see, there are different types of protection measures according to different laws, for example, according to mining law, according to nature conservation law, according to forest law, and so on. So this may cause some problems as well. For example, we have Červený kopec or Red Hill, nature monument in Brno, and it is an old Lewis pit, and you can see on the right side the urban plan, and green on the middle is the area, and you can see it is surrounded by planned buildings. So it was quite difficult to discuss this topic, and moreover, the blue line is planned tunnel. It's not yet present there because of complicated geological condition. But somehow it was managed to deal with these demands on this place. Thanks to some debates with local people, with Agency for Nature Conservation, it was planned that the buffer around the pure nature monument will be enlarged, and that the profile will be cleaned, and over the profile there will be some roof, and which will serve as a viewpoint and area of recreation. But of course, some buildings will appear as well. But regarding the fact that we are in a heavily populated area, I think this can be seen as a kind of compromise. Thus, we can see that these threats can be also, in some cases, opportunities. Here are some selected threats and opportunity that we can manage. The first, urban development or construction activity. When digging and so on, we can enrich our knowledge about earth sciences. I will give some examples soon. And also we can include somehow the citizen or industry or other companies in research projects and citizen science projects. Regarding the overcrowding, recreation and tourist pressure, which is very common in urban areas, since not only during COVID times as we lived, it's possible to connect or use this overcrowding for geoeducation and to show people that this is not the only area that they can go. They can visit another places within the city. And of course, we can somehow propose new geotourist products and give some information about geohistorical or geoarchaeological aspects of the sites. Regarding the use of water and geomaterials, here I think the most important is the use of abandoned quarries as sites for recreation and geoheritage hotspots. And of course, as in the previous case, it enrich our knowledge about the use of local materials or on local monuments. And of course, very often in cities, there is more emphasis on protection and management of cultural and technical heritage than natural heritage. But the opportunity is the integrated protection and management of cultural and natural heritage, or connecting geoheritage to other types of heritage, for industrial heritage, and so on. Here are some examples also from Brno. In 2009, there were some temporary exposures during construction work southern part of Brno in Švédské Šance, and there in one dig it was discovered crinoidal limestone overlaid by Neogene sediments, which contributed to the earth science knowledge. Then another example, the use of abandoned municipal quarry Jungli today is used as a basis for environmental education activities. There are some geological paths and llama breeding, which is quite attractive. And of course, linking natural and cultural heritage. Here you can see Cathedral of St. Peter and St. Paul and obelisk. Both are part of municipal monument reservation and is protected according to monument law or cultural laws, but they have also geoheritage relevance. They are created from local materials. Another example of connecting natural and cultural heritage is included in Hadi Quarry, which is quite interesting in terms of geodiversity, and also it has important historical and cultural aspects. Historical mining was done here since Middle Ages. Limestone was used both for burning lime and as building and decoration stone. And after finishing the quarrying, the majority of quarry were left as it is. And thus it became quite interesting place regarding the biodiversity and geodiversity. Our aim was to create a geoeducational material which would connect geodiversity, biodiversity and culture. And we used a so-called mind map, which is quite simple tool where you can write and anything you think about in some groups. And then based on this mind mapping and also based on the ecosystem services assessment, we created a draft of some geotourist material or a geotourist map where we put the information together. So you can see some places connected with some special interest. For example, number 2, Jurassic limestones is related to buildings or monuments in the Brno city center. The similar case is number 7 on the right, on the top. The quarrying of Hadi marble, which is used in old churches within the city. So this was our aim to interconnect biodiversity, geodiversity, and cultural heritage. Concerning public outreach, we cooperate with Tourist Information Center in Brno. We created Brno Central Geotrail. We do some guided walks for wide public. We do some education of tourist guides and teachers who then teach their pupils or students, and tourist guides, for example, a specialist in architecture and history, include the knowledge about geodiversity into their guided tours, into their own guided tours. Of course, we offer some educational programs for schools, including the creation of didactic materials for students, and the hot news are geocruises on Brno Dam. I will speak about it in a while. Also, we cooperate also with Municipal Office of Brno and Agency for Nature Conservation. I mentioned that we proposed some new sites to be protected in the category of important landscape element. It's quite low category, but it is already included in urban planning, so I think it's quite good step forward. Then we cooperate on monitoring of the currently protected sites, and together with Agency for Nature Conservation, we somehow cooperate on the preparation of updating care plans of selected sites. This is the example of our activity, the leaflet of Brno Center Geotrail. It's quite short, but I think it can be considered quite successful because it creates quite nice alternative to traditional destinations in Brno. And in the occasion of International Day of Geodiversity Day, we offered a new geotourist product, which are geocruises on Brno Dam. Brno Dam is traditional recreation area situated on the contact of Brno Massif and Boskovice Furrow, so it's lithologically and morphologically quite interesting. And there are regular boat surveys, and we cooperate with Tourist Information Center and Brno City Transport Company, who run regular boat transport. So you can see some places near Brno Dam, which are quite tourist attractive. And we created a simple material which give information about locality on the shore, but also about localities and geosites around the Brno Dam, which can be visited in a single trip or some walk. So these are 11 sites, both visible from the GeoCruise and possible to visit individually. So I think that in future years, in next years, we will continue on this offer. And I think this is all from me. Thank you for your attention. And then I will look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for the very nice presentation and for the very nice topic that you presented. I would like to highlight two factors before we move to Jack. One is that we have the discussion after the second presentation, and the second one is not a technical one, just an information that can be interesting to you. Yesterday we just celebrated the 175th anniversary of the Hungarian Geological Society, and I'm very happy that this event can also be the part of the celebration year of the society. And the ProGEO in Hungary works within the Geological Society. This is why we are affiliated to the Geological Society. And after the presentation of Lucy from Brno and a presentation that was on the ground, I think we are ready to move to the space and talk about geoconservation, not from the ground point of view, but from the exo point of view. So I would like to invite Jack Matthews, who is the Geoheritage Conservation and Interpretation Officer of the Charnwood Forest Geopark. And we just participated 1 month ago in the Charnwood Forest Geopark, and that was a fascinating conference and very well organized conference. Thank you for the conference, and thank you for being here. So Jack, please take the floor.
Köszönöm szépen, Martin. Thank you so much, and thank you very much for everyone who's here. It's a great honour to be part of this first series in new talks being provided by ProGEO Hungary. Thank you for joining, everyone. After a fantastic talk from Lucie, I'm going to tell you a little bit, rather than the practical elements that Lucie told us about how geoheritage and geoconservation is working in Brno, in Czechia. We're going to take a step back and have something a bit more theoretical as we look to the heavens and have a think about the aspects of geoheritage that might be reflected in celestial bodies other than the Earth. So, next slide. So, let's have a look at a bit of background of how humanity has been interacting with different celestial bodies in the world. You can see there a graph showing the cumulative number of landings, impacts and crashes that have occurred on other celestial bodies other than the Earth over time. And you can see after the initial intensity of the space race in the late 1960s and early 1970s, there was a period in the 1980s and 1990s when there were many fewer landings on other celestial bodies. But then more recently, things have picked up again and are continuing to intensify and are now back up to the kind of rate of these events that was occurring in the 1960s and the 1970s. Now, of course, all of these events have the possibility to impact negatively the natural environment on the bodies that are being landed upon, or indeed sometimes impacted or crashed upon, sometimes intentionally crashed and sometimes unintentionally crashed. So this is a problem that humanity is going to increasingly have as the race to explore space continues. And also more non-state parties, that is private enterprises, are coming into this field and wanting to explore space as well. And we have seen that most recently with things like Elon Musk's SpaceX, who of course fired a car into outer space. And there was really no prediction on where it would go. And some people have now looked at the data of how this is orbiting and suggested that it is actually going to crash. So this is an issue. The issue of conservation of outer space is something that is increasingly important. So what has been the debate and the discussion in these kinds of areas already? So Mark Williams has published a number of papers you can see on the top there, just generally talking, and there's one just generally talking about space ethics, and others have commented on the need for international agreement. There's of course the Outer Space Treaty, which I'll refer to a bit later, and there is also the Moon Treaty, also sometimes referred to as the Moon Agreement, as it's basically a failure of international governance, because while the document was finalised, the major spacefaring nations actually never signed up to it. So the Moon Treaty is effectively useless. There have been academics who have discussed the impact that resource exploitation, such as mining, could have on different areas of outer space. And there's also been a lot of discussion about biological contamination. So that is either actually the discovery of life elsewhere and contaminating Earth if it was ever brought back, or indeed the contamination of dead landscapes in outer space by microbes from Earth. There's been a lot of discussion of space debris and crashes, and there are separate international agreements on these things. But again, these agreements that exist in international law purely refer to the legality and what will happen, the recompense, should a crash impact another spacefaring nation, a spacecraft, or private property on Earth. They do not in any way reflect the impact that a crash or debris might have on the natural environment. And then there has been a limited amount of discussion on more broad scale thinking about how conservation might work in outer space. And the high profile example of that is Charles Cockell and colleagues' work suggesting the idea of planetary parks and the idea that there might be the opportunity to copy a similar framework to what we have on Earth in our national parks, and could that work as a way of protecting spaces on other celestial bodies? And it's worth taking a step back as well and thinking about what are the threats to important aspects of the space environment. What are the threats? And there's things like landing and mining, crashes, whether they be unintentional or intentional. Sometimes space landers and other orbiters are purposefully deorbited, sometimes just so they're not still in orbit, and other times as part of scientific experiments. There's still natural threats to some of these space environments, weather and erosion, contamination, and then things like, as we look into the future, what would be the impact of things like terraforming? And just as on Earth, we should also make sure that the impact of scientific research is a positive one, and we must also consider the threat that scientific research can put onto our space environments. So why is this important? Why am I bringing this topic to you today? You being geologists and earth scientists and people concerned with geoconservation. Well, if we're thinking about the conservation of space environments and other celestial bodies other than the Earth, if we look at what these bodies are made of, unlike the Earth, which you can see on the right hand side there, which has a biosphere of something around 2 × 10⁻15 kilograms, as far as we know, as our knowledge stands at this time, we are the only celestial body with life. So there is no biosphere on any other celestial bodies. So if we're going to conserve space environments, what we are looking to conserve is the geosphere. There is no point copying biotic conservation practices from Earth and extrapolating them elsewhere, because what we're looking to conserve is the geosphere. And we already have a set of frameworks and ideas on Earth, as we all know, called geoconservation. And so what I'm suggesting to you today is that we should extrapolate that idea of geoconservation to build a more broad concept of how we will look after special places, special environments that are represented on other celestial bodies. And indeed, people have been suggesting this for some time, and there's a paper there at the bottom by Jim Swartz, who has shown that the current concepts around planetary protection don't actually deal with what we might think planetary protection policy means. If you, as potential outsiders to this kind of discussion, you might see the term planetary protection coming up quite a lot. But again, that is just a term that is concerned with biotic contamination, both to other celestial bodies and back towards Earth. So we do need, if we recognise that space environments need to be protected, we do need a concept other than planetary protection. And what I'm suggesting is that that should be exogeoconservation. So again, just to reinforce that, we know we have geodiversity on other places. And if we focus on Mars here for the purpose of this slide, we know, looking at the even simple geological maps we have of places like Mars, there's a lot of different geodiversity there. So we would call that exogeodiversity. And we can very easily say, and I think many of you would agree, that amongst that exogeodiversity on Mars, there's probably some things of value that we need to recognise as exogeoheritage. And just as we do in places on Earth, once we've recognised that there's some importance to an area and recognise that that is geoheritage, there's little point in doing that if we're not going to look after it. And so we do need the principle of exogeoconservation, which we defined as the identification of scientific, aesthetic, cultural or historic value in celestial bodies and in their component geological and geomorphological features, and the protection of such bodies and features. So we pitched this idea in the publication Acta Astronautica, and I should really reinforce to you that everything I'm talking about today is a joint project with my colleague Sean McMahon, who's at the UK Centre for Astrobiology, part of the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. There we are on the right-hand side presenting this concept at the Geological Society of America meeting, and it was all published in 2018, so you can read more about that there. But let's just have a bit of a discussion about what this might mean going forwards and how it might potentially work. So let's again look at how things work on Earth. And if we look at the UNESCO World Heritage Sites and geological representation within the World Heritage Sites, there are kind of a number of different reasons why we might recognise somewhere within the World Heritage Convention framework of having outstanding universal value. So there might be what I would call scientific geosites, places like Mistaken Point in Canada that have been recognised because they have an important story to tell in the evolution of our planet or life on that planet. In this case, Mistaken Point being home to the oldest animal fossils anywhere in the world. We also have aesthetic geosites, landscapes that are protected because of their wonderful beauty, places like Yosemite National Park in the USA. There's also cultural geosites, geology and geomorphology that has important cultural value, and a great example of that is Uluru, part of the Uluru-Kata-Tjuta National Park in Australia. And of course, there's historic geosites, places and communities and landscapes that tell the story of how geology has influenced society and communities, and a great example of that being the Cornwall and West Devon mining landscape, a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the southwest of England. And these sites are managed, recognised, the legislation put forward, the protection put forward, and the management done by a host of different organisations. So, for example, in the US, some geoheritage, not all, is protected under the auspices of the National Park Service. If you're in Canada, a lot of the national designations are maintained by Parks Canada. If you with hello Murray Gray, good to see you here today. If you where Murray comes from in Scotland, your geological sites are often managed by the organisation, the government organisation Nature Scott. And of course, we do have a number of international designations to places like World Heritage Sites and Global Geoparks, though it's important to recognise, though I realise I'll be telling an audience that already knows this, you know, those designations don't confer protection. You must have your protection in place already. And of course, we often have quite complicated on Earth frameworks and regulation that help protect these geoheritage sites. So there is a simplified diagram, even though it's still quite complicated, of how geoheritage can be protected within England in the UK. It's important to stress that the different nations of the UK have different legislative structures. And so, for example, in England, you could have geoheritage that's recognised and protected as part of a national nature reserve, or a site of special scientific interest, or a country park, or a limestone pavement order, and what have you. And that diagram there is showing you the different government and non-governmental agencies and how they relate to different designations. And I'll just show you all of this to show you how things are happening on Earth, and to get us thinking about how exogeoconservation might work in practice elsewhere. But the important thing to remember is there is, as I have mentioned, some existing law, international law in place, and any proposal I make to you today needs to recognise that is already in place, and we need to probably work within the frameworks that already exist. And one of those principles of the Outer Space Treaty and other agreements, is that no nation can make a territorial claim in outer space. It is the outer space is the place for all of humanity, and therefore we can't just enact geoconservation policies through national frameworks, the kind of national frameworks that I'm showing you in the diagram there. So are there other models that we could potentially learn from? Well, one would be to look at Antarctica. Antarctica is another place where an international agreement exists, namely the Antarctic Treaty System, which is actually a series of different international agreements, where countries have conveniently agreed to put aside their territorial claims for the moment and work together for the betterment of scientific research and conservation. And you might not be aware, but there's a range of different ways that sites can be protected in Antarctica, and they're all done through the various protocols and committees of the Antarctic Treaty System. And a lot of these sites, you might be thinking that all of conservation is in Antarctica is about penguins and biology, but actually many of the sites are geosites, and they are protected often as either Antarctic specially protected areas or Antarctic specially managed areas. They're slightly different, each of them, but they have the capacity to control actions and what people can do in those areas, and they are implemented through the various nations of the treaty. So our proposal in the paper, and the proposal I make to you today, is that we should learn from that great piece of international diplomacy, the Antarctic Treaty System, and implement something very similar for the conservation of outer space. It seems, I think most people would agree that there are going to be very special sites that we come across, and that we have already come across, that need conservation, as there is no biosphere out there. The paradigm, the idea, the set of concepts to conserve those areas is geoconservation, and with some modification, exogeoconservation is the concept which is best suited to protecting special areas in outer space. But because of the existing constraints of international law, mainly in the Outer Space Treaty, we need to think about an international framework that doesn't require national legislation, that is the world working together. And so practically what we are saying and suggesting, Sean and I, is that a new international agreement, either a standalone or as part of the existing treaties, and which we call the Exogeoconservation Treaty, needs to be created and can copy many of the aspects and frameworks and policies and processes of the Antarctic Treaty System. And simply, this would create what we call exogeoheritage management sites. This wouldn't control access to different sites, because that is controlling access is already prohibited under international law, but it would set up a code of conduct for each site that is recognised, and that would control what people can do in those sites. So, for example, are we going to suggest that people don't land any more spacecraft in that area? Are we going to control the removal and collection of specimens, whether people can drive their rovers through it, things like that. Now, this framework has the potential to work quite well as people are increasingly exploring space, because what we're proposing in our exogeoconservation concept is that we regulate specific areas of value. We are not seeking to ban all mining or all resource extraction, but recognise the areas of outer space on celestial bodies that are of real significance, and then concentrate on protecting those areas and making sure that they are regulated. That would mean that you can still mine and quarry elsewhere, and it's also through this code of conduct concept, similar to what is done in some areas of Antarctica. It's flexible in its application, with each site having a tailored set of rules and regulations for what is appropriate for that piece of exogeoheritage. So what might these look like around our solar system? So one potential exogeoheritage site, exogeosite, could be the Valles Marineris exogeoheritage management site on Mars. This is an area of course, important scientific research. It would be huge. It would be several hundred kilometers long, important for our understanding of the evolution of Mars in its paleo environments and the processes that have governed and controlled Mars for some time. But also, I think it is legitimate to say that were this site on the Earth, it would be protected as some kind of aesthetic geosite, because these large-scale landscape features are often regarded by most people as beautiful things that people want to see and visit. There's also places like Gale Crater on Mars as well, where the Curiosity rover landed. And this is a good example of the necessity for some kind of conservation practices on celestial bodies. You can see on the right-hand side there a stratigraphy that is being built of this part of Mars, with the recognition and description of various stratigraphic units using similar protocols as we would use in stratigraphy on Earth, with groups and formations. But of course, just as on Earth, there is very little. When we define something, we're meant to define in stratigraphy a stratotype, and of course we shouldn't be really defining a stratotype unless we're going to protect that site so that it will always be there for people to go and observe and study. And so we should likewise be thinking about our representative stratigraphic sections on other celestial bodies and making sure that they are conserved. Otherwise, there's very little point in having these stratotypes around. And of course, there's places which are of great cultural significance and historic significance too, most notably the Apollo 11 landing site on the moon, somewhere where there's been a great deal of scientific research. There are still experiments running on that site today, and of course of great cultural value, namely because it's the first place that humans ever walked on another celestial body. Important to remember, of course, that on a celestial body like the moon, where there is no wind because there's no atmosphere, that footstep in the dust is still there, and could very easily be destroyed by the landing of another probe, another lander very nearby. Now, at the moment, the best that organizations like NASA can do is politely request that no other nation land a lander within 75 meters, which is the request that they have made on this site. but it's clearly a focus of attention. There are groups like For All Moonkind that have been set up, a not-for-profit in the United States that is seeking the protection of this site. But sometimes they and their colleagues have suggested things that simply won't work in international law. So at one point there was a suggestion that this should become a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And of course, because it's not within the borders of a particular nation, it simply doesn't fit within the World Heritage Convention treaty. And as I've already said, and we know, World Heritage status doesn't confer any conservation controls. It is a badge of honour that must come on top of existing protection. And then to steer us away from Mars and the Moon, let's have a look at places like the kind of proto-planet Ceres and the Ocata crater. This is a place which has been observed to have highly reflective material. And the fact is, we don't know really what that material is. It's suggested that it's probably some salts that have been deposited by some kind of fluid, some liquid, but we simply don't know. And sometimes we need to protect exogeoheritage that we don't understand, because if we destroy it, we'll never understand it. The suggestion that there might be water in this crater has already drawn the eye of some potential explorers of our solar system as a site where oxygen and hydrogen could be created and spacecraft refueled. So it is important that some of these representative examples of this exogeoheritage and the processes related with that are protected, so we can better understand that. And we often think about geoheritage sites as places we've fully understood. We've got all the science, and that's why we've protected them. But it's important to remember that that's not always the case. In my own area of Charnwood Forest, an aspiring UNESCO Global Geopark in the UK, we have two sites that are designated as triple SIs, so they're formally and legally protected, and they're protected because they have features, and we have no idea how those geological features formed. And of course, if we don't protect them, no future generation of scientists will be able to decode these strange features. And so we propose in our paper that we also need to think about the conservation of these sites where we can see that there's a feature, but we don't truly understand it. So you might be thinking, and I would totally understand if this is how you're thinking at the moment, is this a whimsical endeavour? I am not going to be walking out on any celestial body other than the Earth soon. They are remote and rarely visited. Why should we be thinking about the concept of exogeoconservation? Well, firstly, this is a period of rapid change. There's increasing private investment as well as state investment going into space exploration, and we need to put the legislative frameworks and the international agreements in place before the implementation of this period of rapid change in space exploration. There's also an important concept of intergenerational fairness. While we may not, the people on this call, be individuals who ever get to explore the exogeoheritage sites that I have proposed to you today, we still have an ethical obligation to protect them, because who knows what future generations might be able to do. There's also a virtue ethical imperative on us to do these things. We should think about the different ways in which and the reasons why we might want to protect these sites. Just because we can't visit them today does not mean that we shouldn't protect them. Just because my eyes will never be laid upon and never see directly the Valles Marineris on Mars does not stop it being beautiful and doesn't prevent us from protecting these sites. So we should still be protecting these sites. And also because we have such a great example in the Antarctic treaty system of a framework that we could copy, bringing the world together to protect these important geoheritage sites in outer space. So at that point, I'm looking forward to your questions. I fully recognise that there needs to be a lot of further development work on the principle of exogeoconservation, and I'm really pleased to say that there's actually a group working on this in Australia. Claire Fletcher, a PhD student, is doing their total PhD on exogeoconservation. So it's nice to see the next generation of geoscience thinkers coming through and applying their brains to this. I think we need to do much more collaboration, particularly with some of our legal colleagues, to think about how this might work. And yeah, just to reinforce again the need for collaboration in how these ideas will be implemented. So thank you for your time today. Köszönöm szépen to you all. And I'm really looking forward to your questions. So thank you very much to Martin and all the team for having me. And I hope I've sold you the idea that we shouldn't just be focusing on geoconservation on Earth. The time is right to discuss its implementation elsewhere as well.
Köszönöm szépen. Thank you very much, Jack. That was an amazing presentation, raising some points that cannot be or hasn't been evident for us until this time, and I'm sure that many of the participants will search for the article that you just talked about. So thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to the participants to open the discussion. So please, if you have any questions to any of the presenters, either to Lucie or either to Jack, please do not hesitate to ask. There's only one thing that I would like to ask you. Before you ask the question, please raise your hand, so I will know who asked the question. So please, you are free to ask now. Just to warm up, I have two questions, of course. One question for Lucie and one question for Jack. Let's start with Lucie. How did the Czech people received the urban geoconservation concept? How did they react? What is the behavior on those sites during the organized programs, and not in the organized program when they visit them themselves?
During the guided tours in the city center, they are usually quite surprised that there is some kind of geodiversity, because, you know, a lot of cultural monuments are taken as a part of cultural heritage. But when you add that information about geodiversity and eventually connection to land use, landform development, and so, I have some reflections that they really like it. And for example, when I had a guided tour this September, there was some teacher, and then she asked me to give a guided talk for her students. So I think this is the possibility how to spread the knowledge and the concept of geodiversity, or let's say the possibility of mainstreaming the geodiversity, because still, even in our country, of course, you know, we know it all, the geodiversity is still somehow omitted. Living nature and cultural heritage are more emphasized, and so this is the way how to infiltrate in another kind of activities. And regarding the fact how people, what are people doing in some places without a guide, I think it's getting better, especially thanks to some common sense of heritage. I think during COVID time, a lot of people saw that nature is not infinite, that it's also a kind of a resource that we have to care about. And I think somehow it got better, but it's going slowly. And this is also our task or our goal, to learn to people how to comport in the special places and learn them or give them information why these places are so special. So I think it's getting better, slowly but surely.
Thank you. And who is responsible for organizing these tours that you mentioned? Who organizes them?
Usually it's done by me, and I cooperate with Tourist Information Center, which is very responsive and very good at promotion. So they have it on the website, and they help with promotion of GeoTrail, and they offer it do this promotion instead of me, because I have not so large network of contacts, and so it's quite nice that they take this topic as one of the alternative, because everyone in Brno knows some functionalist architecture, some industrial heritage, and this is kind of fresh alternative to this traditional heritage.
It's very good to hear that you have living connections with the traditional form of tourism. Mm-hmm. So that your initiation of geotourism is integrated within the city's touristic offer, if I can say so.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is along. It's not the highlight or top when you come to Brno. It's not the first thing that you have to see, but it's quite fresh alternative to go through the geopath and look at the places with different eyes.
Thank you. And the question to Jack, or one note and the question. Yeah, I was just surprised of the footstep that you mentioned on the moon. I have never thought about the vulnerability of that footstep. And yes, I think it's quite interesting, because a few years ago I've been in Portugal when we saw footsteps of living creatures in the rock, and there was infrastructure built around it to see the footsteps, and they thought there that the erosion is destroying the footstep, and it is important to preserve the footstep from the erosion. And yeah, there is no erosion on moon. There is no wind on moon, and what can destroy this footstep? We can destroy this footstep. So it's a very interesting thing to think about. And there is one more thing that came to my mind: the garbage in the space. Is there any threat to the exogeoconservation sites by the garbage that is currently in the space?
Potentially, most of the garbage, of course, will affect Earth. So isn't it, obviously it's more of an impact on geoheritage, not exogeoheritage. It's important to note that a number of the crashes that I showed in my first graph are from the intentional deorbiting of orbiters once they have finished their task, and some of those have happened on the moon, and some on Mars, and some on various asteroids as well. So there's a potential that what we might subsequently recognize as geoheritage has been destroyed by those things. It's also important to think about the cultural significance of various things that we can see in the sky from the Earth. For example, the moon has great cultural significance for a number of people on Earth, as does things like Halley's Comet. Hallie's Comet has been an important thing in cultural significance. It pops up again and again. You know, the Norman conquest of England, it was represented, and it was stitched into the Bayer tapestry. If we put so much stuff into orbit that it obscures our view of these features, then you could argue that the exogeoheritage is being affected. But so that's one concept to think about. What is space without the space in between the celestial objects?
Thank you. One comment, if possible, and if you would like to, Jack and Lucy, there is a need of your contact information in the chat section. So if it's comfortable with you, we would be happy if you could share your email address in the chat section. And while they are typing, I would like to give the floor to someone else to have a comment or a question. I see that Victor is raising his hand, so please feel free to ask or comment.
Thank you. I have a question or comment to Lucie. Do you agree that in urban areas, this all geosites and geoheritage has now particular importance for education because of the educational gap in the education about nature in general, which usually appeared during the COVID era, because due to the long period of e-learning, and there is usually some educational gap in young people education about nature in general, and therefore I think it's particularly important now to fill in this gap. Do you agree with me?
Thank you for the comment. I agree because in our schools the geodiversity is not educated, and for most of the people geology is not very attractive. But these kind of activities like guided tours directly for pupils or for children from schools, from primary schools and from secondary schools, I think is a way how to raise awareness of the geological sciences or earth sciences. And it's much more better than sit on the classroom and just listen. It's much more better to go to the field and see these rocks used in some walls or in some monuments. I think it's quite attractive for people, for pupils and students. And when I guided the students from like 14, 15 years, it was quite a challenge for me because, you know, this age, they are quite, they have a lot of other interests. But after the finishing, they started to do their own geo jokes, like, oh yes, it's only 15 million years old sand, and so I think this is quite nice reflection of what we are doing with my colleagues from Mendel University, and so I think it's absolutely important to provide these geo-educational products to fill the gap in state plans for education in geography, or there is no geology, in geography or biology, because in our country the geology is learned, it's a part of biology, so it's a little bit strange. But I think this is the way to offer the guided tours and field trips. So yes,
Thank you.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Additional comments or questions, please feel free to intervene.
Martin, I would just add that I think the world would be a better place if more geoscientists were doing exactly what Lucie does and spending a little more time. I know many other people do it, but it's worth saying academics getting out of the university, working with municipalities on tourism and getting out and taking school groups around. You can see Lucie's work. She's organised multiple events every Geodiversity Day, and it's a great thing. And in a world where geoheritage is underrepresented in our education systems, we need more people like Lucie getting out there and sharing the message with classrooms.
I completely agree. Yes, I completely agree. And I think it's very good to see that there are more and more organizations in countries or between countries that try to deal with geoconservation work. I mean, geoparks, national geoparks, or global geoparks, nature conservation areas. Some organizations like the Geological Society of Hungary, who organizes some promotional and science dissemination programs to young people, and not just to young people, but for everyday people about geosciences. I have one more question to you, Jack. Do you know, you mentioned that UNESCO is not capable, and the World Heritage Site, IDEA is not capable of handling sites outside the Earth. Are there any organizations who could do this?
As far as I am aware, there's no existing international treaty. Of course, there is, for example, there is nothing to stop IUGS, who now have their international geosite recognition. They could designate an IUGS geosite on another celestial body, and while that would be an extremely useful thing with regard to the dissemination of the concept of exogeoconservation and exogeoheritage, it doesn't make the people come together and actually look after the site. So while that would be, perhaps we will confuse IUGS in putting an application in for the designation of an exogeoheritage site, but that doesn't practically put in place a framework for the conservation of these sites. So we still need some new framework. There was some hope, obviously, after we published the paper in 2018, there was the announcement of a new international agreement for space exploration called the Artemis Accords, and there was some hope that that might include a framework for the conservation of outer space. However, the conservation element of that international agreement is only focused on cultural heritage. So it seeks to protect places like the moon landing site, but it would not help us to protect a more traditional geosite such as Gale Crater on Mars.
Well, who knows? There should come a book after the first 100, the second 100, and the third 100 geosites. There should be a book of the first exogeosites.
Absolutely, we've got to start somewhere.
Yes. Are there any other comments or questions in the audience or from the audience? Don't let any questions remain in you. Until you are thinking, I will just share my screen and start a promotion. What's that screen? I think this is the screen that I have. Yes, I think you see my screen with the EGU call for abstracts for the 2024 European Geosciences Union General Assembly that will be in Vienna in April, and we will have a very nice session on geodiversity and geoheritage. That will differ from the practice that was in years before this session, because we had separate sessions for geodiversity and geoheritage. And yes, it was the custom that these were on different days. But now we will have one whole day for geodiversity and geoheritage from the morning until the evening. And we will have probably and hopefully a nice session of presentations and posters too. And during the poster session, I would like to highlight the indoor picnic to be held. That's a very nice tradition that was established a few years ago, and very nice discussions were emerged from this indoor picnic. And just because we will have the geodiversity and geoheritage people in one place, that could mean many posters and many presentations. I think that will be a very fruitful discussion and a very fruitful meeting. So I would like to encourage you, if you have a topic, if you have a nice research idea that you can submit, please do so, and do not forget to promote this event to your students and young research fellows, because there is an opportunity for early career scientists to submit an abstract before the 1st of December. I know that's close, but nothing is impossible. So if if a student or a PhD student or can submit an abstract before the 1st of December, they can apply for a financial support. That means free registration to the EGU conference and some cash. So yes, please feel this event as your event, and we would be very happy to welcome you in this event. And if there is any question, or if there are any comments or questions in the audience that came to your mind while I was talking, please do not hesitate to ask. Or there is also the opportunity to reach out to the presenter through their email addresses that were just typed in the chat section. So if there is any, we wait for some seconds. I see Marina's comment. Thank you for the nice comments. And I would just like to say that if there is no any other questions, two things. One thing, we will have the second online ProGEO seminar in the first months of 2024 organized. I already have the potential presenters in my mind, so be prepared for the second session of this seminar. And the second thing that I would like to say is a big thank you to the presenters, Lucie and Jack. It was an honor to have you here. It was an honor to listen to your presentations. I am just very happy that this event came to reality from the talk that we had in Loughborough. And I have a very big thank you for the audience. I am very happy that you were here. I feel honored that you were here, and please meet next time. And you will get the YouTube version of this meeting soon. So thank you very much, and meet next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Viszont látásra.
Thank you.
Viszontlátásra. Bye-bye.
So thank you all. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.